This is too stupid even for him. Those are the words of Donald Trump's niece, Mary Trump, in her social media reaction to Donald Trump's latest proof that he is unfit to serve as president of the United States. Mary Trump was reacting to Donald Trump's social media post of a message to the Prime Minister of Norway, in which Donald Trump, in what appears to be more evidence of cognitive decline, possibly cognitive collapse, says that because the country of Norway did not give him the Nobel Peace Prize, even though the country of Norway has nothing to do with choosing Nobel Prize winners, Donald Trump is now even more eager to take Greenland away from Denmark, which Donald Trump might not know is actually a different country from Norway. Those are two different countries. Donald Trump's stone-cold ignorance has been a defining characteristic of his entire public life. And so it is possible Donald Trump has never known that Norway and Denmark are two separate countries. Donald Trump might think that Denmark is the capital of Norway, or the other way around, or maybe he once knew they were separate countries, but now his 79-year-old increasingly shattered brain can no longer hold on to facts like that. The Greenland thing is, and always has been, a Trump diversionary tactic. Trump is no more serious about it now than he was the first time he mentioned it over 6 years ago. 6 years from now, Donald Trump will have done nothing. Donald Trump is never going to do anything in Greenland. He's not going to buy the place. He's not going to invade the place. But he is going to talk about Greenland every day that he can, because the American news media cannot resist saturation coverage of such a simple issue. And every bit of coverage of Greenland is not coverage of the Epstein files, as we will be covering tonight. More than 99% of the Epstein files Donald Trump is now illegally hiding. We will be covering that story tonight. And every news mention of Greenland is not coverage of what Donald Trump's invasion forces did not change in Venezuela, where the regime that was in power before Donald Trump's invasion remains in power tonight. And every moment of coverage of Greenland is not coverage of Donald Trump's invasion forces in Minneapolis and other parts of the country that did not vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, who is by far the most incompetent Treasury Secretary in history, once again faced Sunday morning questions yesterday that he just could not answer.
If the United States were to take Greenland by force, how would that be different than Russia's annexation of Crimea?
Look, I believe that the Europeans will understand that this is best for Greenland, best for Europe, and best for the United States.
That man is going to spend the rest of his life claiming that he saved us from Donald Trump's worst impulses. Marco Rubio will do the same thing. Most Trump cabinet members will be claiming that for the rest of their lives. His Secretary of Labor won't claim she did that, because there is very little evidence that she's ever spoken to Donald Trump, and no one would know she actually is the Secretary of Labor if Rupert Murdoch-owned New York Post wasn't reporting on her under the headline, Inspector General Probe Uncovers Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Ramirez Office Booze Stash and Strip Club Visit with Subordinates. The Post, citing 5 sources, reports, quote, the investigation has also confirmed that rumors the secretary pursued an inappropriate relationship with an underling were discussed internally months ago and dismissed by her chief of staff, Ji-Hun Han, who was put on leave Monday along with his deputy, Rebecca Wright, 3 of the sources affirmed. The Secretary of Labor has denied wrongdoing through an attorney, and the Labor Department declined to comment. Such is life in the Trump cabinet. Donald Trump is the most difficult client the Supreme Court has ever had. And yes, I mean client, not litigant, because
that during their phone call on Sunday between Trump and the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, that President Trump conceded to Starmer that he may have been given bad information about that increased deployment of European troops to Greenland. What could that bad information be? Well, the intention of that deployment is to explore security needs for Greenland and perhaps to boost security for Greenland, in part to meet President Trump's demands. Did Trump interpret that deployment as instead a European defense against any U.S. involvement in Greenland? It's hard to know exactly what he misinterpreted there. I will say this, UK officials say that our Danish counterparts briefed the U.S. prior to that European deployment, and not only brief them, because I'm told by a senior Danish official that those deployments were coordinated between Europe and the U.S. through their existing military channels. That said, the UK is seeing that small concession from President Trump to Starmer as at least a potential path to de-escalation. They're looking for hope here, Aaron. But one thing that has not changed, I'm told, by UK officials, Danish officials, and others, is that President Trump has indicated no desire or willingness to move off his demand that the U.S. take Greenland somehow, some way, and that remains a red line for European leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if that's what he's saying and that's what they're saying, then where we are, still bumping up against a wall. All right, Jim, thank you very much with all that new reporting. And Jim has more reporting coming up at 9 p.m. on The Source. Don't miss that with Jim. And a lot to get to with our experts here. Okay, Seth Jones, let me just start with you because I know you've had a lot of conversations with European officials here in these past hours. What are they feeling about this?
Aaron, they're feeling exasperated. I had one senior official who advises a head of state in Europe say that they just cannot understand that the biggest threat from NATO is not coming now from the Russians, although that is serious, but now from the Americans within NATO. That NATO, which has a 1951 pact in place to allow the United States to put space-based assets in, air defense assets in to protect the U.S. homeland. Really the ability to protect U.S. national security assets, U.S. can do that with what is in place right now. So just exasperated that there is such a threat to the alliance right now from the U.S. for what most people do not fully understand, the rationale, the strategic rationale.
Street in Denmark, they do not understand why Donald Trump is doing this. They are and have been our strongest ally, and they said that they have agreed to and will work with America and our NATO allies for anything that is necessary for our national security. There is no question about that. And what has happened, I was just in Denmark in April of 2025, and we saw the favorability rating for the United States of America because of the conversations and the statements of Donald Trump was going down then. It has gone from what it was then, because it had gone down from 98% to about 50%, and is now down to 11% of what the viewpoint of the United States is. And so they just want their old friends back. They want a strong NATO. They want what has taken place over 75 years, the strength of us working together. But if the United States continues to push, if Donald Trump continues to push to take Greenland, which they were clear is not for sale at all. Mm-hmm. So he says he wants to buy it. It's not for sale.
Today, we will explore how influence, messaging, and uncertainty interact during high-profile negotiations. This discussion is not about any specific individual, location, or real-world event. Instead, it focuses on general patterns that often emerge when strong public statements, symbolic actions, and collective responses converge. In complex negotiations, language matters. Words are not only used to communicate intent, but also to signal confidence, urgency, or leverage. When statements are framed in absolute terms, they can attract attention quickly, but they may also raise concern among observers who prefer gradual consensus and shared decision-making. High-profile forums often amplify this effect. When leaders gather in prominent international settings, statements made there tend to carry added weight. Even informal remarks can be interpreted as signals of future direction, prompting reactions from multiple sides. Messaging in these environments serves multiple purposes. It may aim to persuade, to pressure, or to test reactions. Sometimes it is designed less to announce a final decision and more to observe how others respond. This brings us to the role of public signaling. Public signaling involves making statements or gestures that are visible to a wide audience. These signals can shape expectations before formal negotiations occur. They can also influence the tone of subsequent discussions. Symbolic actions are a form of signaling. Images, messages, or symbolic representations can carry meaning beyond their literal content. They may express confidence, ownership, or ambition. At the same time, symbols can provoke strong emotional responses if they touch on sensitive issues. Because of this, symbolism is powerful but risky. Symbols can unify or divide. When interpreted differently by different audiences, they can complicate dialogue rather than clarify it. Another common feature of high-profile negotiations is information asymmetry. Not all discussions happen in public. Behind visible statements, quieter conversations often take place. These private exchanges aim to manage tension, explore compromise, and prevent escalation. Public statements and private dialogue often move at different speeds. Public messaging may appear firm or dramatic, while private discussions remain cautious and exploratory. Understanding this difference helps explain why public tension does not always lead to immediate confrontation. Observers often watch closely to see whether public pressure changes behavior. When strong statements are made, attention shifts to how others respond. Do they push back? Do they call for calm? Do they reinforce existing positions? This observation phase is critical. It reveals whether attempts at influence are effective, resisted, or redirected into dialogue. Another important element is collective response. When multiple stakeholders are involved, responses are rarely isolated. Groups often coordinate messaging to present a unified stance. This coordination can signal stability and shared boundaries. Collective responses also distribute responsibility. By acting together, stakeholders reduce the risk of appearing reactive or isolated. Coordination provides reassurance to internal audiences as well as external observers. However, collective coordination takes time. Aligning perspectives among many participants requires consultation and compromise. During this period, messaging often emphasizes calm and restraint. Calls for calm are strategic. They slow escalation and preserve space for discussion. Calm does not mean agreement. It means postponing confrontation in favor of process. Another recurring theme is pressure versus autonomy. When strong demands are made, responses often emphasize independence and self-determination. This dynamic reflects a desire to protect decision-making authority and avoid appearing coerced. Statements emphasizing autonomy are also signals. They communicate boundaries and reinforce legitimacy. These signals are especially important when public pressure is perceived as excessive. Balancing firmness with openness is challenging. Too much firmness can escalate tension. Too much openness can appear uncertain. Effective responses often combine clarity about boundaries with willingness to engage. This balance shapes credibility. Credibility grows when messages are consistent and measured. It weakens when messaging shifts abruptly or becomes contradictory. Another factor influencing these situations is media amplification. Media coverage magnifies statements, images, and reactions. Amplification can intensify scrutiny and accelerate response cycles. This makes careful wording even more important. Once amplified, messages take on lives of